The sharp hum of clippers vibrated through the cramped break room at the city's precinct, cutting the tense silence like a blade. The officer wielding them, a burly man with a smug expression, loomed over his captive. A handcuffed man, head tilted forward slightly, sat rigid in the chair, his piercing eyes glaring defiantly. He refused to look away as the razor's buzzing blades ripped through his closely cropped hair. Officer Doug Grayson leaned closer, his grin twisting into something sinister. The man before him wasn't just another arrest. He was a symbol, a target of Grayson's deep-seated anger. "You think you're someone important, huh?" Doug snarled. "Not here. Not with me." The man in the chair held his silence. But beneath the calm exterior, his mind was racing. This wasn't just any detainee. This was Judge Adrian Cole, one of the most influential figures in the justice system, known for his unyielding fight against corruption. The situation spiraled faster than anyone could have predicted, and soon enough, it wasn't Adrian sitting helpless. It was Doug, cuffed and disgraced, his career in shambles. How had it come to this? Just hours earlier, Judge Adrian Cole had stood at the front of a packed auditorium, his voice steady and commanding as he addressed a crowd gathered for a community forum in downtown Barristan. The event focused on bridging the growing divide between law enforcement and the marginalized neighborhoods they were sworn to protect. Adrian, dressed sharply in a charcoal suit, spoke of unity, accountability, and the need for mutual respect. As the applause echoed, Adrian descended the stage, shaking hands and exchanging words of encouragement with attendees. The energy was palpable, a rare moment of optimism. But as he approached his sleek black sedan, the mood shifted. A patrol car idled nearby, its red and blue lights cutting through the late morning sun. Standing by the vehicle was Officer Doug Grayson, his posture stiff, his gaze sharp with disdain. "Problem here, officer?" Adrian asked, his tone calm but commanding. Doug took his time, studying Adrian as if assessing a threat. His voice was cold when he finally spoke. "You're parked illegally." Adrian frowned, glancing at the event staff still dismantling the barricades around the reserved spaces. This spot was cleared for speakers. "If you check." "I don't see a permit," Doug interrupted, stepping closer, his hand resting conspicuously on his belt. "Step away from the car." Adrian hesitated, his instinct urging caution. Nearby, a few bystanders noticed the exchange and began recording on their phones. Adrian raised his hands slightly, his voice steady. "I'm not resisting, officer. Let's not escalate this." But Doug had already grabbed Adrian's arm, yanking him back. Gasps erupted from the onlookers as murmurs of outrage spread through the gathering crowd. "You're under arrest," Doug spat. "Failure to comply." Adrian, dignified even in the face of indignity, allowed himself to be cuffed. The cameras captured everything. The forceful shove into the squad car, the mocking sneer on Doug's face as he slammed the door shut. Inside the precinct, Doug paraded his authority, booking Adrian without offering him basic rights like a phone call. Tension among the officers was evident, some shifting uncomfortably while others whispered to one another. But no one spoke up. Things escalated when Doug produced a pair of clippers, holding them up like a trophy. "Let's see if that suit of yours means anything now," he said mockingly, pushing Adrian into a chair. Adrian endured the humiliation in silence, his jaw tight as the razor buzzed over his scalp. His mind churned, a tempest of frustration and resolve. This was about more than him. It was about every unjust arrest, every misuse of authority that went unchallenged. But just as Doug stepped back to admire his cruelty, the door slammed open. "What in the name of God is happening here?" boomed Captain Laura Reed, her authoritative voice freezing everyone in the room. She scanned the scene, her sharp eyes landing on Adrian's shaved head and Doug's triumphant smirk. "Captain, this man was—" Doug began, but Laura cut him off. "Save it. Cuff him," she ordered two nearby officers. "What? You can't. He's the criminal." Doug protested as the officers moved in, securing his wrists with the same handcuffs he'd used on Adrian. "No, Doug," Laura said coldly. "The only criminal here is you." Outside the precinct, word of Adrian's arrest had spread like wildfire. A crowd had gathered, protesters holding signs that read "Justice for Adrian" and "End Police Abuse." Reporters jockeyed for space, their cameras capturing every angle of the intensifying drama. Inside, Adrian sat quietly in a private room, his lawyer, Ethan Harper, beside him. "Adrian," Ethan said, his voice brimming with outrage, "this is more than a case of police misconduct. The footage alone, this could expose systemic issues." Adrian nodded, his voice measured. "It's time we held them accountable. Not just for me, but for everyone who doesn't have the platform I do." Captain Reed entered, her expression a mix of regret and urgency. "Judge Cole, I've already alerted internal affairs. Grayson will be dealt with." "That's a start," Adrian replied, standing tall despite the lingering indignity. "But it's far from enough. This isn't an isolated incident. If you're serious about justice, you'll let this department face the scrutiny it deserves." Laura hesitated, but finally nodded. "Do what you need to do, Judge." The courthouse steps were alive with energy as Judge Adrian Cole addressed the crowd later that week. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow on the sea of faces before him. Reporters jostled for position, cameras flashed, and the hum of murmured conversations buzzed through the air. Adrian adjusted the microphone, his freshly shaved scalp a stark reminder of his ordeal, a badge of resilience rather than humiliation. He raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. "What happened to me is not unique," Adrian began, his voice steady and resolute. "But the difference is that I had cameras. I had witnesses, and I have a platform. Most people in this situation don't. Their stories are buried, their voices silenced, and their lives forever altered by unchecked power." A ripple of agreement swept through the crowd, a collective acknowledgement of the truth in his words. What Officer Grayson did wasn't just a personal attack. It was a symptom of a system that too often fails to hold itself accountable. And I stand here today not as a victim, but as a voice for those who can't speak out. The crowd erupted in applause, but Adrian wasn't finished. He held up his hand again, and the noise subsided. "This isn't just about one bad officer. It's about the culture that allows abuse of power to thrive. It's about policies that protect the wrong people while leaving communities vulnerable. It's about us, all of us, demanding better." He paused, scanning the crowd, his eyes locking with individuals holding signs that read "Justice for All" and "End Abuse Now." "And we can demand better," he continued, his voice rising with conviction. "Change doesn't come easy. It takes courage, persistence, and unity. But history has shown us that when people stand together, systems have no choice but to bend toward justice." Adrian stepped back for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. The crowd was still, every face turned toward him with rapt attention. He took a deep breath and leaned into the microphone again. "My fight isn't over. Officer Grayson has been arrested, and investigations into this precinct are underway. But that's just the beginning. I filed a civil rights lawsuit not for retribution, but for reform. And I won't stop until we see real, tangible changes in how law enforcement interacts with the people it's sworn to protect." Cheers erupted once more, louder this time, filled with hope and determination. Adrian stepped away from the podium, shaking hands and exchanging words of gratitude with activists and community leaders. As he descended the steps, his lawyer, Ethan Harper, appeared at his side. "That was powerful," Ethan said, his tone admiring. "But you know this fight is going to get harder." Adrian nodded, a small but confident smile on his lips. The harder the fight, the more worthwhile the victory." The crowd's chants echoed behind them as Adrian walked away, not as a man defeated, but as a man determined to turn his pain into progress, his story into a symbol, and his fight into lasting change.